think the hardest thing is it's quite easy to get an initial idea, but to turn the idea into a full story is actually quite difficult. So we came up with the idea in a conversation, actually, the Snorgh and where he lived and some sense of the story. But it took a long time before we got, well, I worked out all the adventures and who the sailor is and what happens towards the end. So actually, the initial idea is quite quick. If you don't have an initial idea, of course, that's very, very hard. So also waiting for the idea is difficult. Once you've got the idea, then you have to develop it into something a bit longer, and so it is a full story.
I remember when the Snorgh landed on my desk when Will had sort of written it, and the first thing I wondered was, well, how am I going to draw the Snorgh? What's the Snorgh going to look like? So the whole process begins of trying to translate those words into a whole visual world and making that world believable and fun and all these extra details that you can add in. So that's the real challenge of the illustration, and it's quite an adventure in its own right. As soon as you hear a story, if you're an illustrator, the words are already starting to paint pictures in your head, and you know that it's going to be a good thing for you to illustrate if your head's starting to fill up with pictures.
You're writing books for publishers, you have editors. And so the editor, Alison Green Books, she was terrific for really hammering out ideas. So I'd go down to London and we'd spend, I think, 3.5 hours sitting in her office, drinking tea, eating chocolate, and arguing really intensely whether a Snorgh would really go to sea in a bathtub or not, or whether he would take a soup pot with him, or whether he'd leave a soup pot at home. And we'd be talking about these things as if they're really important, which they are, of course, in the book. So editors and other people in publishing houses are also very good people to, they know what works and what doesn't. And it was a fascinating process for me to have those conversations.
The Snorgh that you see in the book is not the first Snorgh that came into my head. I drew lots and lots of different types of Snorgh, and I tried them with sort of very short snouts rather than trunks, and different colours, different shapes, and skinny ones. One looked more like a bird, one looked a bit like a tiger at one point. So what you see in the book, it looks like it's all just happened immediately, and I'm sure the same goes for the words, but in fact there's a process of development which takes a long time to bring the story to life.
When I first saw Tom's illustrations, I don't draw myself. And I thought, oh yes, of course, that's exactly what a Snorgh should look like. It felt absolutely right, but before then I hadn't had quite a precise enough image of what a Snorgh was. And it was almost like magic to see suddenly Tom getting out his pen and producing this thing, and thinking, yes, that's a Snorgh. The world is full of ideas. Sometimes if you're just sitting at home and it's just you and the contents of your head, the contents of my own head tend to get a bit boring. So I go out and explore. So I think exploring and reading books, of course, not so you can nick other people's ideas, but because you can see how other people take ideas and turn them into stories.
I think that when you haven't got any ideas of your own, the first ideas that pop into your head are other people's ideas. So it'll be the things that you've read, or the things you've seen on the internet, or films you've watched. And those can be really good inspiration, but they're also second-hand ideas. So if you want your own ideas, as Will says, you really have to turn to your own experiences. And I think people don't necessarily realise, or especially children, don't realise how many stories there are all around them. So my advice would be to think very carefully about anything that your family or friends have said to you, places you've been, things that you've done, and you don't have to go far. Just like Will says, it could just be a trip on the bus or to the local park, or loads of things happen at school. Just think of all the stories that potentially happen in your own life. In the same way that people say about keeping notebooks, people always say that artists should keep sketchbooks. And I have also never been very good at keeping sketchbooks because you do a picture that you don't like, I know things just don't really work out. I find it quite hard to keep going page after page. So what I do is I scribble on lots of different bits of paper, little just scrap bits of A4, and I put all those loose bits of paper together in a folder. And anything I don't want to keep, I just chuck out. And it sort of helps me not feel like it's that precious.
I know a lot of writers who say you must have a notebook and you must write down in your notebook. I'm terrible with notebooks. I'll fill in the first 4 pages and then leave them on the train. And then buy a new notebook and fill in the first 6 pages and leave it on the train. I'm horribly disorganised. But in terms of making notes, I do like scribbling. Although I'm not a very good artist, I like drawing. I think about stories in terms of pictures. So I will draw frames, little squares, and fill them in with stick people. And I scribble things down on bits of paper, and I lose the bits of paper, and then I find 2 bits of paper which have nothing to do with the story I'm writing, but somehow they feed in. One thing I say is just get writing. So if you start writing and you write your story and it doesn't quite work, but there may be good things in it, you can put it on one side, come back to it later, write another story. Keep writing, keep exploring the world, keep following up ideas. Some things won't work. And that's the fun of stories. You don't know, is this story going to work? Is it not going to work? And don't get despairing if something doesn't work, because there's always more ideas.
I've never been to anywhere with an iceberg, so I've never been to the Antarctic or somewhere. That would be a great thing to do, to go somewhere where I've never been before.
Climb a volcano.
I'd take my kids, because I think they would really enjoy going on an adventure with the family.
I think if I'm climbing a volcano, I don't know if these things exist, but probably a fireproof umbrella, just in case.
Do you know, I thought, when I was illustrating the story, I thought a lot about what might happen afterwards, and I actually drew a picture which never ended up in the book, of the Snorgh sitting back in his house. But this time, it's sort of all being cleaned up a bit, and he's got photographs of all his journeys, like all over his wall. So he's got his memories of his travels and his friends and all the things he's done. So that's how I like to imagine the Snorgh, not escaping from his life, but just returning to it in a different way.
I'm still hoping that one day I'll be wandering around somewhere and I'll meet him, and he's actually still out there before he's come back with all the photographs, and he's still out there kind of having all kinds of adventures. So I'm waiting for that.